right, we're back. Another episode, special episode for me. PB and Jax, pioneers, builders, Jacksonville, Florida. Here with my mentor, somebody that I've known for a long time and somebody who's taught me a lot in this recruiting profession. Got Mr. Paul Fogel with me. Paul, thanks for taking the time, man. I'm happy you're here.
Yeah, Randall, happy to be a part of it. It's been a great journey as watching you build PB and Jax, and happy I was finally able to get on an episode.
Yeah, I'm happy too. I'm also excited for a lot of value. I think we're about to bring some recruiters, some of the talking points we're going to go through, and I'm certainly going to hold some time for us to walk through AI. It's such a big part of the conversation around the recruiting profession, and I'm sure people are interested to hear about it.
Yeah. It's a hot topic in every profession, really.
That is true. Maybe we can debunk some myths or, loosen some fears or something like that, but it's always nice to have the info. I did want to start off a little fun. So you're a Tampa Bay Buccaneers fan. Obviously, the Jaguars, they just landed Liam Cohen. And I want to see if you could start us with like your best Liam Cohen Duval impression.
Well, it's pretty tough to imitate that. There's a little head weave in there, and I believe it was Duval, which was god awful. Not a great first impression. He's working on it. Candidly, it was bittersweet watching him go. He really helped the run game. He did a lot of great things in Tampa. I think he's a heck of a football coach. We'll see how he does as the head man in charge in Jacksonville. But Duval's a more fun spot when the Jaguars are doing well. The Bortles run was pretty incredible to watch here. The community was jumping. People yelling Duval from the rooftops was a hell of an experience. Hopefully he does well.
Yep. The part that they edited out was he said to the community and to PB and Jax, Duval. I was like, hey, I would have edited that out too. We're happy he's here. I think he's going to be good for Trevor Lawrence and the football team as a whole. Sucks, for Tampa to lose him, but I'm glad he stayed in state and came here, and hopefully he can bring some energy around this town, especially around the football team. I went Florida State today. I kind of decked myself out. Anybody that knows Paul Fogel knows he is a big Florida State Seminole.
Not a big secret. You can see the wall. You can see the tattoos.
Yep.
So yeah, even down to my marker holder. Got to represent, but busy day of meeting. So I'm in a nice subdued black polo.
Well, I kind of do my best to not flaunt that I support a losing situation as best I can sometimes, but every time I go out in public wearing this, people try to say like, I can't believe you're wearing that. And I say, it's how you build character. You can't root for them just when they're good. So here we go. Let's represent them. Well, let's do a little bit of talking about work and about what you do and whatnot. So you're at Korn Ferry. Korn Ferry is a little bit different than your typical, Modus or Robert Half or Tech Systems. And your title's sector leader. Maybe we can start there and just go high level, and then we'll just get granular after the fact. Can you kind of talk about who Korn Ferry is and what Paul Fogel does for Korn Ferry, and a little bit more about what you do?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Korn Ferry was a dream job of mine ever since I really got into the industry. I got my first taste of competing against them back in 2011 when I first got into sales in the recruitment industry. I kind of had my lunch money taken because it was a CFO job that I was competing for. Unfortunately, the company had already paid a retainer to Korn Ferry, so they weren't willing to engage anyone else, even though they wanted to use me at the time. But Korn Ferry, we're really a global consulting organization, and we are best known for our talent acquisition arm, specifically our executive retained search offerings. It's what the brand was built on, but we've expanded into advisory, organizational change. We have interim offerings, both at the individual contributor and at the executive level. My role as a sector leader, I run what's called professional retained search, which is mid-level executives. That can be everything from management all the way through the C-suite, depending on company size and compensation banding. So not to get too granular, but I'm handling roles typically in between $200,000 and $400,000 in cash compensation on a retained basis. And you're right, it's definitely different than Tech Systems or Modus. No hate towards either of those organizations, but they do operate more on a contingency basis. And what our retain model allows us to do is really be more consultative, display more market data, show an upcoming pipeline, showing candidates that may have not been interested or may not have been a fit, by providing reasons, market data on their compensation, all of that to our clientele to better educate them and help them drive towards a decision on a hire.
Okay. No, that makes a lot of sense. So you're not working a lot of tech support roles, is what you're saying.
Yeah. It's been a few years since I worked some help desk or tech support. We did a lot of that back at Modus. I certainly did it at Robert Half. But yeah, at this point, it's almost exclusively leadership, and then some really high level individual contributors, high compensation roles, principal AI engineers, principal product managers, things along those lines.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's great. Honestly, I know that through conversations we've had together, you love interacting with the leadership and whatnot. And hey, the tech support stuff's great too. You got to start somewhere. It kind of makes me pivot to my next question. Really, it's more of a holistic view question. You use the word retained a little bit. Some of the work that I do in the staffing industry is called contingent. So when you get to Korn Ferry and you get to this global consultative type of atmosphere, and you dive into this retained search, excuse me. What does that entail? What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, I mean, from a fundamental commercial standpoint, contingent is being paid upon delivery. So there's no payment issued until a successful hire is made, and that's the contingency aspect. There's a level between contingency and retain called contain search, which is almost just a miniature retainer. Typically, it's somewhere in the 5 to 10% of expected cash compensation, and that's placed down as a container. And then the work is done, and if a successful hire is made, then the rest of the fee is due. And then there's what I do, which is fully retained search. And so companies come to us because of the additional offerings. It's a higher level of service. It's more data, more market intelligence, and it's more consultative. So what I'm able to offer at this level that is not able to be offered at the contingent level is we drive market analytics, data. We have a full research team, both onshore and offshore. So it's a 24-hour research team. We have our offshore team in the Philippines. We have associates onshore that are doing sourcing and research. And then we also have project coordinators, recruitment coordinators, travel coordinators. Because typically with retained search, it is at the executive level, vice president or C-suite. And so there's a lot of travel because that talent is not always going to be in the same city where the company is hiring. So we do everything with a white glove level of service, from candidate presentations. It's not done via email and a resume. It's a full presentation that's done live via video meeting most of the time. And we walk through motivators, drivers, their work history, why they're a good fit, the P&L size that they've managed. We walk through their career history, reasons for changing positions. And then we also walk our clients through a full pipeline, who we're reaching out to, where they are now, both geographically and from a career standpoint. It allows us to get far more in depth, and we build a deeper consultative relationship at the retained search level. And then the service the entire way through is not only presenting candidates and arranging interviews. We have our own behavioral testing offering. The Korn Ferry 4-dimensional assessment, or the KF4D, was designed by industrial and organizational psychologists, and we have people who take it throughout the process as companies get close to a group of finalists. That report, they get to customize everything. So they get to set their preferences for what type of leader that they're looking for. Is it more collaborative? Is it somebody who works more independently? And that is included and adjusted against the industry leading baseline that we have, because our assessment has been taken by millions of executives worldwide. And so it's a chance for you to see what a best in class profile looks like, and then what your personal company is looking for in a leader. That's broken down. It provides a behavioral interview guide, and then you actually get a readout from one of our IO psych analysts. It's a complete and comprehensive process when you're working with Korn Ferry on a retained basis.
Dude, this is fascinating. I mean, I talk to you all the time. I didn't know all of this, like how in depth this was. So this is an experience. Like, this is a whole ordeal. So when people come to work, or people come to use Korn Ferry for any kind of a placement service, whether that's on the client side or the candidate side, they're getting a 360. We are literally hitting on every single possible thing that could be in existence for this hire to make sense or not make sense. Like there's no really second questioning or doubting once you place somebody that they've been thoroughly vetted.
Oh yeah, I mean a full psychoanalytic profile. We do education verification, of course, references. Everyone should be doing references. I can say we do 100% of the time. I can't speak for every firm, but there's a thorough vetting. By the time a client sees a candidate profile at Korn Ferry, it's gone through at least one of our associates' initial sourcing, screening, and through, we would call it an engagement manager, whether it's a managing consultant or a sector leader like me. At the professional search levels, the candidate will go through at least two interviews, two video interviews with us, totaling typically around an hour and a half. And then at that point, we build out a candidate profile, present it, walk through all of that. And then once they get into the interview process, we don't want to burden people with an hour-long assessment on the front end of the process because you don't want to push anyone out. It tends to be not a great use of time for any party involved until you know, hey, this person is a good fit from a cultural perspective. You like their experience, what they're bringing to the table. But before you make a hire, it is a complete and comprehensive process we're experiencing.
Yeah, that's great. You were talking about references. It made me think of something. When I do references, I'd love to see how it looks compared to how you guys do references. You personally, I'm writing a book. I don't think everybody in the world knows that yet, and it's on recruiting. And in the reference section, I say that I do a 360 reference view. So if I'm talking to somebody who's an individual contributor, let's say at the engineer level, I want to talk to the person they report to. I want to talk to a peer, and then I want to talk to somebody who may have reported up into them. So I can see from the boss level, how they are as a performer, as a peer, how good are they as a teammate, and then from the subordinate, how good are they as a leader? And it really paints a great picture. I've gotten a lot of positive feedback on that from managers, but how does that compare to the reference process at Korn Ferry?
Yeah, great question. So our references can be guided by best practices, which is typically the next level of leadership up or peers. Sometimes our clients want that full 360 view. Sometimes they're not as concerned with the subordinate reference, but we always implemented that 360 reference process when we worked together at Modus, and that was incredibly successful. It's something I believe in. I like to talk to people who have been mentored or managed by whether it's a manager, an individual contributor, any of that. It just speaks to who they are and what their potential is in the future. But at Korn Ferry, a lot of it is guided by what the client wants to see, where they would like to see the references coming from, whether it's someone in the C-suite, whether it's depending on the role, if it's a revenue generation type role, what do their clients think? So we've done things as far as what client would speak positively from your past, and we've had people who are in the commercial organization, the sales organization, where we'll do a client reference, we'll do a management reference, things along those lines. So we do custom build that package for our clients.
Very cool. As for hiring for your team, there's going to be a different way to hire somebody into a contingent role versus a retained role. Looks like you guys are a little bit more thorough. You certainly lean on the professionalism of the job, which means you're probably hiring a higher quality individual to perform the duties. So if you don't mind, what is the difference? If you're hiring somebody at a contingent firm versus hiring somebody at a retained firm, somebody at Korn Ferry specifically, what are some of the traits that are different between the two? And if somebody's working in a contingent role now and they like the idea of working in a consulting role down the line, what are some of the things you would recommend that they work on to sharpen?
Yeah, speaking from my personal experience of my hiring process here at Korn Ferry, it was the most thorough I've ever been through. So it of course started with basic phone screens with the talent acquisition person that reached out to me. It was a beautifully crafted LinkedIn message. Shout out to Dirk Spencer. Still thankful that he came and found me. But what that process started with Dirk, and then I met with John Cooper, who is my market leader. I met with Justin Martinez, who is our COE leader or Center of Expertise leader for technology, given my background and my heavy career bias in the technology industry. Then I ended up meeting with people who would be my peers, like Michelle Fisk, Smirti Kangovi, who's a management consultant here. I got to meet with all of them, turned around and met with an executive search partner because at Korn Ferry, we do partner a great deal across different offerings. That's where I'm handling $200,000 to $400,000 compensation packages. The executive search team is handling 400,000 and above. And so you do see a lot of partnership and cross line of business work there. So they wanted me to meet with an executive search partner, make sure that I had the presence and the market knowledge to be able to be a viable partner for them, someone they'd be comfortable sharing business with. So going through all of that process, then I met with Ned Philly, who is the president of professional search. So he is one level up from my market leader, John Cooper. And then it wrapped up with Bill Sabra, who is in the strategy and operations side for Korn Ferry. All in all, it took just over a month to get through the entire process. I was willing to put almost everything else on hold. I had a couple other offers in hand, and Korn Ferry is really where I wanted to be. So I was able to wait my way through the process, thankfully, and ended up exactly where I needed to be. But the process here is very thorough, and we have to take the KF40 on the front end as well. So they get a full psychoanalytical profile on us as we come in the door, and they want to make sure that we align with the company core values, the way we operate on the business side. So yeah, it's incredibly thorough. And the way that compares to contingent, again, you're not going to have as many steps. You're not able to offer the same type of salary or compensation package that you're able to get at the executive or retained search level. So you have to shorten the process. There's more competition when you're hiring at a Modus or a Robert Half. You're competing against Tech Systems and Experis and all the other contingent firms in the area, whether it's S&I, CSI. And so there's a level of urgency when a good person hits the market in the contingent space, where it's almost a race to see who can get the racehorse that just hit the market.
Yeah. In terms of traits for, let's say, producers, individual contributors, what are some of the ones that stand out on the contingent side that you would say in all of your years in recruiting leadership are the ones that separate the good from the great?
So first and foremost, I think it starts with work ethic. You've got to have people that are willing to grind in the contingent space. You get a lot on the individual contributor side. Recruitment does get a somewhat negative connotation from the market. People are used to contingent recruiters being a little more transactional and less process driven, less relationship driven. And that's something that you actually did a great job adjusting to and counteracting in the market. It's something that I've always prided myself on, is building strong relationships and really understanding not just the market conditions, but the skill sets, the technology itself, and then being able to communicate market trends and technology trends back to candidates in the market, clients in the market. That's really what separates good from great. You're not going to be good if you don't have the work ethic. You're not going to be great unless you actually work on your craft. And that can take the form of continuing education. I have an active Coursera subscription where I'm taking classes on AI, project management, market trends, impacts on business. And, it takes constant reading. It takes dedication so you can be a thought leader in your space. And that's really important. Again, that separates good with great work ethic and dedication from great, which is being able to provide value back to the candidates and back to the market.
Yeah, the longer I've done this and the more companies I've worked for, the more I realize that so much of somebody's success and, despair is based on the environment that they're hired into. Because looking back on it, whenever I came in, as you're well aware, I didn't have any experience. I was fixing helicopters before I came into Modus, and it really, I was put into an environment that would allow me to succeed, and therefore I did. I'm a big believer in that. One of my favorite things about us working together is I, for the life of me, could not figure out development. I just couldn't. For some reason, none of it clicked. None of it made sense. And then you gave this big presentation, this big training on how to look at development as a car and the engine and the frame and the back end and the brakes and all of that. And it was clear to me that we had leaders that cared about having the producers and the individual contributors work on their craft, but also give them a direction, putting up the bumper plates so that you can go off in your own direction and do your own thing. But at the end of the day, we can find a way to keep you on the lane. So kudos to you. Kudos to Travis Webb, and shout out to Travis Webb for obviously creating an environment where somebody could go from nothing to something.
Yeah, I mean, Travis is a great leader. I know he's a mentor of yours. He's a mentor of mine too. Good friend to both of us. But a lot of that being able to lead like that is predicated on having people with a great work ethic. You came in, you were willing to make the calls, and you were willing to learn on the fly and learn from the market, from the candidates, and ask the right questions. Somebody like Charlie Burnett, who you've also had on PB and Jax, came in and he simply outworked everyone around him. And that's how Charlie made his impact early on. And then he gained knowledge and he built his network. And now he's a successful entrepreneur working with his brother. And again, it all goes back to work ethic and then being willing to take the time to hone your craft, learn the market conditions, learn how to add value, and really grow from there. So you can't be a good leader without hiring the right people and identifying those right traits. Hiring is not always a perfect process, especially when you're dealing with the type of base salaries that happen so often in the contingent industry, which thank goodness is shifting. You're seeing better comp packages, you're seeing better base salaries. That allows firms to hire higher quality people, which ultimately provides better results. That's just another market trend.
Yeah. Speaking of market trends, artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
Everybody's favorite topic. And you have really just dived in feet first. Like you just seem to have been taking that on like crazy. Just the conversations you've been having with people, upper level tech, about the issues that they're facing because of AI, the ethics of AI. I know that that's a big part of it. And to the point that you've been writing or been contributing on white papers at Korn Ferry about AI. I guess I'll start by asking why is it so fascinating to you?
Well, right now it's the next frontier, right? People have talked about the different technology innovation pieces and the different industrial innovations. You can go back and say, hey, look, from the assembly line with Ford in the early 1900s, you get up through in the 90s, it was ERP systems providing clarity across organizations, allowing for better future planning, more inventory control. AI is that next frontier where you can automate, you can start to take out some of the repetitive task-based work, you can drive summarization, and most of that right now people think AI and they think about the generative artificial intelligence or the general purpose technologies, the GPTs. The really exciting thing to me in AI is more on the applied side, the research side, being able to run simulated trials on drugs, on proteins, on foods. It's going to change the way not only that we work, but the way we live, what we're putting in our bodies, the way we're evolving modern medicine. Heck, it's being used within dating apps to learn about preferences and to help people find, hopefully, the love of their life, right? I'm sure that's the goal for everyone else. Thankfully for me, I was off the market before dating apps were a thing. I don't have to worry about that, but it's really interesting to see the way it's being applied in different fields, whether it's researching your next pharmaceutical breakthrough, whether it's helping somebody find their husband, their wife, whether it's being used to develop a new cancer treatment. It's just, all in all, it's a fascinating new frontier for us.
It is. Do you think, this is just me asking out of ignorance and curiosity, that we're utilizing AI for incredibly important things such as cancer and whatnot, that we can't fully say and or tell that it's giving us back the accurate data that we need to be making informed decisions around topics that large and that important?
So, I mean, you can't take drug development straight from applied artificial intelligence research and into production, but it is being used to run simulated drug trials, trying different protein synthesis, trying different versions of a drug, and it is in a simulated environment. So then it has to go through all the proper trials, whether it be animal testing, human testing, all of that. But it is being used to expedite research because AI, especially now with the emergence of quantum computing, you're able to run millions of trials within the span of a year rather than having to develop and then go through animal trials and double blinds, all of that taking 10, 15 years. You're just able to do much more of the research and get close to the right solution much faster than you would have 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when you had to go through trial and error process with chemistry and medical trials. It just gets you much closer to the mark before you get into the trial stage.
In a much quicker capacity.
Yeah. It's expediting really every aspect of our lives, whether it's summarizing long legal documents, briefs, whether it's looking for hidden language in contracts. It's being used in so many fields. It's actually emerging in the recruitment market. all these HCM softwares are starting to build AI modules in. They're trying to use it for talent acquisition. And it's not a perfect practice because it's still fed by human data. There's actually a really interesting instance of this, and it was in Europe, I believe in the UK, where an HR team was using an AI talent acquisition tool to hire for a software engineering role. And after about 3 or 4 months, the director of software engineering noticed he wasn't getting any candidates, went to his own resume, took off the director position. All of the applicable technologies that he wanted to hire for were on his resume prior to that role, sanitized it, changed the contact information, submitted it into their talent acquisition portal, and received a rejection within 30 seconds. And it's because the AI tool was looking for specifically Angular JS, which was the first version of Angular. And it kicked his resume back because he wasn't working with that version of Angular. Well, they weren't hiring for that. They didn't need to look for Angular JS, which would have been, at that point, old technology. This happened April 2024 is when I saw the article, ballpark. And so they were using a much more recent version of Angular. And because it wasn't phrased the way the HR team had put it into the AI filter, his own resume got kicked back as unqualified to join the company. And so when that happened, he then took the evidence back to HR, and they ended up finding that the talent acquisition team in this AI tool had rejected dozens of qualified applicants because they just weren't doing their own screening. So AI is not a perfect science. It is still driven by human input. But when it's used the right way, when there are the right bumpers, to use your analogy, to keep it on the lane and in the right direction, yeah, it's incredibly helpful. But it's emerging in every industry.
Yeah. Is Korn Ferry using it at all?
Yeah, we have our own AI tools. We're building our own AI offerings, whether it's sales effectiveness, breaking down pipelines, likelihood of deals closing, whether it's, we have our own Bing Enterprise. So it's a GPT tool that keeps all of our data in-house and doesn't share it back with the Microsoft model to continue training it. So yes, we use AI, and personally I use it on a daily basis.
Yeah, my favorite thing that I read recently was somebody said, in reference to AI taking our jobs, is specifically as recruiters and or staffing professionals, is until the client can tell you exactly what they want the first time, our jobs are always going to be safe. And I just found that to be the funniest thing because it's accurate.
Well, yeah, and I mean, then AI is going to have to learn inference. Natural language processing, or NLP, is helping with that because it's able to take terms like what happened in the UK with Angular JS. Well, if you put that into an NLP tool, then it'll put all different variations of that into the search. And so clearly they weren't using the right filters, the right guidance. But there are steps being taken that help to make it more accurate from an inference standpoint. Until it can read between the lines and understand what people are writing on their resumes in context, it's not going to be able to fully replace the human element. What it can do is baseline sourcing. I don't think it should be used for screening at this point, although some companies are trying to use AI screening tools.
Mm-hmm.
I think there needs to be a better candidate experience than that. And I think that includes interacting with a person rather than a chatbot or an email screen, anything like that. That just doesn't provide a good candidate experience, and it's not going to get engagement from the top level talent that these companies want.
Yeah, I agree. On the flip side, what is the thing you dislike the most about the use of AIs? And maybe we can narrow that down into specifically in the recruiting industry.
Yeah, I mean, in the recruitment industry, I think too many people are trying to use it to take shortcuts and build just pure summaries of, hey, summarize this candidate's resume into 5 bullet points. And I don't think it's being used the right way. If you do get that output from an AI tool, whether it's ChatGPT or Bing or whatever you want to use, it's important to go through and make sure that you're understanding what you're putting down on paper. And far too often, people are just trusting AI without then going back and verifying the work and understanding, is this applicable to the client or to the hiring need itself? It's great that somebody spent 4 years as a SQL developer, but if you're hiring for data scientist or an AI engineer and they have to know PySpark and SciPy, well, if the AI tool doesn't pick up on that or you don't give it the context to know what it's looking for, then it'll create a summary that is almost irrelevant to the position. And there's too many people that aren't using the verification or checking the work. They're just You're using the shortcut to do the summary for them, and they copy and paste it into an email.
I've seen that plenty. My least favorite thing, and I hope somebody from LinkedIn's listening, your preloaded messages stink. They stink.
I don't think I've ever used a preloaded message that LinkedIn has generated.
Man, there's sometimes I'll put in a Boolean into LinkedIn Recruiter, and AI will turn it into a search itself and then take my Boolean and then use them instead of in the keyword section in the skills section. And that's not always applicable. And then I have to change it, which is a time killer. And then when I go to send messages, you can hit a button that says draft this with AI. And if you hit that button, it's like 4 paragraphs. And it's, if you've ever seen somebody say, hey, write a blog post on ChatGPT, and then they copy and paste it into LinkedIn, it's got all the rocket ship emojis and all this other stuff that I can't stand. That's what the LinkedIn Recruiter AI drafted message looks like. And I absolutely cannot stand it. So I hope somebody from LinkedIn watches this. I'm talking to you specifically. It sucks and you need to fix it.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to have your own voice and your own style, your own approach, and people can tell the difference when it's an AI generated message. Maybe not so much on cold LinkedIn outreach, but certainly if it's an established client relationship and you try to use an AI tool just to summarize a resume, they'll see the difference, especially if they've seen your quality of work with somebody like you or somebody like me, where it is highly customized. It speaks to their core values or company needs. If you compare that to what an AI tool will output, it's not the same.
Yeah. And the other thing, and you taught me this, especially if it's a local company and you know about that local company and you know about what they do, how many people are on the team, what kind of technologies they use, you can reference those in the message. And then people actually, they think you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And you draft that in AI, there's no shot. You actually have to have, the market knowledge to administer that kind of a message. So, hey, I think AI is great too. I use it sometimes, but not all the time. For exactly what you said, I think this job still needs the human element. And in the book, there's a whole chapter dedicated to why the human experience is still as needed as ever, especially with the tools that are coming. I've been dying to ask you this for a long time. I just wanted to wait until we were on camera. We were in the office for a long time. And when we were in the office, we all wanted to go remote. And now we're all remote. Do you miss it?
Oh gosh. I miss our office for sure. We had an incredibly special culture. There are huge benefits to working remote. I have more time in the day. I'm able to work more hours. I'm also able to be more present as a father, as a husband, working remote because I'm not stuck in a car for 45 minutes on the way in, an hour on the way home. I moved out of Jacksonville down into St. Johns County, which isn't a huge distance, but when it's rush hour and you're on 95, it's a whole different ballgame. Yeah, I miss the camaraderie. I miss the interpersonal interactions. I think there are huge efficiencies that you gain from working remote. I also think you lose pieces of company culture and core values, that personal touch from being in the office. The celebrations of other people's wins. It's not that you can't do it over email or Teams or anything like that, but it's not the same. When we were in the office, somebody had a big win, a big placement. We had a gong, which was incredibly fun and probably highly disruptive for the other people that weren't on our team. But, it built a specific culture of, camaraderie and being able to be happy for somebody else winning and making money and the company winning and making money. And it's very different being remote. You don't feel that buzz in the air, that excitement. So yeah, I mean, I miss being in office. I miss especially being in our office. There are some offices I do not miss. I'm not going to name names, but some experiences are better than others.
Yeah. The gong was great. The Nerf gun wars were a great way, man. Especially, I'll tell you this, looking back on it, especially when we were having bad weeks, like the tension was in the air, and then somebody just, popped off a Nerf bullet right to somebody's forehead, and we all got to laugh, and then it turned into an all-out battle. And this job is not for the weak. There are really, really good weeks, and the highs are very high, but the lows are very, very low. And just having the opportunity, sometimes just knowing that somebody else is going through the same thing you're going through can help you kind of get through it. And then, when you need lifetime support from somebody, yeah, it's right there. I have been I will stand and die on this hill. If I didn't start my career in the office, I would have no shot to be successful in this career. So it's such a disservice to me to hire new recruiters or new sales professionals in a remote setting, because they don't know what they don't know, and you can't see like if there's something minor that they can tweak that can, completely remove the obstacle from them being successful. You're right. I love remote. It has created an opportunity. If I need to do the dishes on the spot, I can just go do them. It affords me the opportunity to take care of chores. So when I log off for the day, I'm done. But man, I do miss just being able to crack jokes and ask questions on the spot and not wait for somebody's bubble to go from red to green. And it's such a hot topic that I always want to get somebody's advice on that, just to see like, hey, does leadership care about the office versus remote? Do individual contributors miss it? I don't know, but I think it's interesting, and I also can see why the job itself or the industry could be kind of specific to that. So in our job, having some element of human interaction, huge win.
Yeah, and I mean, you bring up a few really interesting points, and not to take over, I guess, the format, but we had to adapt really, really quickly in 2020, obviously, with COVID and everyone going remote nationwide. And we ended up adapting. We had physical boards that we had in the office so people could see what was active, what was being worked on, who was assigned to what. And so, I mean, as you saw as my recruiting director, it was, hey, we have to build a virtual board. We're going to still have team huddles. We're still going to have that live interaction. We had to create new ways to onboard and train people. But it also allowed us to expand our talent footprint, where we didn't have to have people in the Jacksonville office. We were able to hire people with great talent up in Virginia or in Texas or in South Florida, maybe where they couldn't get to an office. If they were, over in Naples or in Tampa when we didn't have an office open in that area, we were able to add to our team with really special people, and we were able to build a great culture even with a remote workforce. And then, some of my fondest memories were as things started opening back up, you and I went on a road show, and we got to meet everybody back in person. And it's astonishing. And it remains that way, right? After working with people remote for so long, you get this perception of, I bet so-and-so's about 5'5". I'm curious. And we had those conversations in the car on the way to Fort Lauderdale, like, hey, how tall do you think person X is? And then you get there and it's like, oh, holy smokes, he's 6'1". I didn't get that read on video. And on the opposite foot, we walk in and we're the Twin Towers walking into an office at 6'4" and 6'1", and we're not small guys by any stretch, but it always made for fun interactions, meeting people face to face for the first time. After interacting on video calls for 6, 9, 12 months, all of a sudden it's face to face, and it's, oh wow, this is not what I expected. But the return to office is a big push, and you're seeing it at a lot of levels right now. Dell recently announced a full return to office 5 days a week, and there's some backlash. They tried a soft launch on RTO, and people were heavily against it. And Dell's initial response was, okay, well, you can stay remote, but you're not eligible for merit increases, pay increases, or promotions. It was around 60% of their workforce is the number I saw quoted, and I forget the exact article. We actually published that study in a Korn Ferry white paper, but 60% of the workforce said, that's fine by me. I'd rather stay remote than get a raise or a promotion. And now here we are about a year later, and now Dell is announcing a mandatory 5-day-a-week return to office. And you're seeing a large number of people having a strong reaction to that because they've enjoyed that, whether it's hybrid or fully remote aspect. And some people moved away from offices. They moved to places with a lower cost of living. Not took advantage in a negative way, but they took advantage of the situation as it was under COVID and the fully remote workforce to reduce their cost of living while maintaining a higher income. And now those companies, we're seeing companies across the country do a cost correction on that front, where, hey, Google is asking people to come back to Mountain View, California. Well, if you move to rural Virginia with a Silicon Valley salary, you were living pretty high on the hog. Well, now it's, do you want to move back across the country, or do you want to go find a new job? And so people are being presented with that dilemma on a daily basis. So I think there is a level of commitment of leadership wanting people back in office, and companies are handling that in all different ways. But it really is an interesting case study and what's going to happen to the market dynamics as a result.
100%. Obviously, we're seeing it just now. The timing of this is impeccable because the executive order that was signed that all federal employees have to go back in the office. I mean, it's a very hot topic.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm very interested to see how all this unfolds, both private sector and public. Last question, really around the topic of our industry and what we do. You mentioned it earlier. We don't have a great perception in the public a lot of times. What is something blanket that somebody that people can do to become better? How can our industry get better? What can they focus on? I know we've touched on work ethic, we've touched on honing in your craft, but what are, some of the reasons we don't have a great look, a great public perception is we've got some bad apples that have done some dirty things. They've cut corners, they've shaved dollars off, they've done some things that are not what you or I would consider to be okay by any stretch of the imagination. But if we were going to lift our brand back up in the public eye, what kind of changes would you like to see in order to make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting topic. And I think a lot of that starts from leadership and strategy. It's not necessarily starting at the individual contributor level. I think it has to be a top down change. There's a lot of companies in the recruitment industry that will do mass hiring with the expectation that they're going to turn over 2/3 of their new hires. And companies treat their hires as transactional. And as a result, the people that come in see that and they operate in a transactional manner. And it's not good for the industry. It's not good for the level of service. It's not good for the client experience. It's not good for the candidate experience. And so I think there needs to be a change in top down leadership on how they approach it. I think there's a number of companies that have equated good production in the recruitment or sales seat with someone who would be a good leader. And I think those are drastically different things. The best producer is not always the best leader, and that holds true across every discipline. And, your best engineer may not be the right person to be your engineering manager. And you can apply that across every single discipline. It's important to identify those key traits in leaders, put the right people into places where they can help teach, guide, mentor. And so that doesn't become a transactional process for internal hiring, development, which really cascades down to the client and candidate experience. So I think it starts at the top and works its way down. And people and companies are going to have to commit more of their time, more of their money to training, to providing a better level of service, a better level of care in that process. And that's something I think a lot of companies struggle with because the transactional model has worked so well for so long. And even on the client side, so many clients went to vendor management systems and managed service providers to run their recruitment, and it cut out that human interaction between a recruitment professional and the hiring management. And without that direct connection, it becomes a game of telephone, and they do it to cut costs. And I understand, hey, costs can get out of control when you use recruitment firms. If you go, hey, we're going to outsource everything, but back then it was Lender Processing Services, LPS. It became Black Knight, FIS. Now it's owned by
ICE.
ICE. And so that's an example of a company where initially it was full contact, it was direct interactions, and they didn't have caps on bill rates. I think cost reduction and cost alignment is incredibly important for companies. But I think cutting out that human interaction is incredibly detrimental because the client treats the recruitment industry in a transactional manner, which ends up with the recruitment industry cutting costs, pulling in people who may not be qualified or have that baseline knowledge. They end up keyword matching and presenting profiles that may not be applicable. And I think it's something everyone can improve on by working together. Really, it's about treating people like people and not a transaction, and that goes on every side of the spectrum.
100%. Yeah, the one-sided interviews, I would like to punt them into the sun. Yeah,
You're not alone.
I know I'm not, but man, those things are awful. So let's start with getting rid of those, and then I think we'll have some snowball effect, and maybe we can get back to the human touch part. I know we're wrapping up here. It's a Jacksonville podcast. I got to ask you Jacksonville questions.
Yeah.
Number one, what are we doing well? What is it about this city that you think we should keep and continue to do? What are some of the things that stand out to you?
So Jacksonville and the state of Florida in general has done a very good job of attracting businesses, making the city and the state approachable for businesses to expand here, to set up headquarters here. Obviously, citizens of Florida moved their HQ from Tallahassee to Jacksonville. You see a very large presence for Bank of America especially after they bought out Merrill Lynch. Wells Fargo has a large presence here. So I think the city leaders, and plural, it's gone through multiple mayors and city council people, have done a good job positioning Jacksonville and trying to make it an attractive destination for businesses. You also see really, really great programs emerging. Like the University of North Florida has done a wonderful job with their technology program of bringing in industry leaders and thought leaders like Mike Potts from Future 23 to help guide some of the curriculum and talk about emerging technologies. Because one of the big faults in the computer science programs nationwide for a long time was they were teaching older technology. They were teaching J2EE when people weren't using that anymore. There was no major company that was focused on Java Enterprise Edition. And so you see the evolution of organizations, whether it's academia, whether it's government, all of that. You're seeing more investment here in the city, and you're seeing the city do a great job of building a network, whether it's Jack's Tech or whether it's Code on the Beach. There are these big community events that are drawing people in, and they're finding great ways to connect with the community and with purpose-driven missions.
Really good answer, Paul.
Thank you.
You're welcome. All right. What can Jacksonville do better?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, Jacksonville's been built on logistics, and we're a great intersection for all forms, whether it's maritime, rail, or road. Uh, Trying to find a way to modernize some of those industries and provide better service across that would be huge. I think Jacksonville needs to do a better job of reinvesting in its communities. We have areas of town that have been run down. We have schools that are quite literally falling apart, and at the K through 12 level, and that's something where Jacksonville does need to improve. Some of that needs to come from state investment. Some of it needs to come from merit-based funds and driving better performance in the schools.
Couldn't agree more. Glad I asked. I appreciate you. I think everybody that listens to this is going to draw a ton of value out of this. And I know we've been working on this for a bit. I'm really glad you were able to come here and talk to me about some of these things. And I can't wait for people to hear it.
Well, I had a great time. Thank you. And I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Yeah, you will. Duval.
You're not getting another one out of me. I'll talk to you later.